So, then I would like to welcome our next speaker, Maureen Cooper. Welcome, Maureen. Maureen Cooper is the founding director of Awareness in Action, an organization dedicated to helping people accomplish well-being in their lives, relationships, and in the working environment. This comes about by developing awareness through integrating meditation and compassion in everyday situations. Maureen is an experienced practitioner of Buddhist meditation and has written the groundbreaking book, The Compassionate Mind Approach to Reducing Stress. Maureen wants to talk to us about kindness as a tool. Do we avoid to show too much kindness in the workplace because we fear to seem too weak? She asks. Maureen views kindness as a tool with great potential and great power. A great power in the working environment, and she will speak more to us about that now. So, Maureen Cooper, welcome. Looking forward to listen to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? Did anyone say no? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to get started straight away because I want to use every second of my 45 minutes. This is what I'm going to try and talk about today. The cost of stress and depression in the workplace, the benefits of kindness, what it is that blocks our kindness, that gets in the way, the importance of mind training, and hopefully I'll have time to introduce a few exercises that we can use in the workplace. But let's start off with a moment's reflection. Can you just sit quietly for a moment and think about your own workplace, even if you work from home? Would you say that your workplace is a kind environment? And if so, why? And if not, what do you think the main reason is? Okay. As it was said in the introduction, kindness in the workplace suffers from being considered a soft skill. People really have very little idea what hard work it is to learn to access and maintain your own natural kindness. And few managers, few people that I talk to recognize the powerful advantages of a workplace based on caring, respect, and kindness. And it's a shame because the figures show that stress and depression in the workplace is very expensive. You see on the screen in front of you, more than 50% of employees feel unfulfilled in their jobs. 1 in 4 people in America and Europe will experience mental health problems in their lifetime. And it's expensive. In the UK, 15.4 million working days were lost in 2017-18 as a result of stress. In the USA, 550 million work days were lost in 2015 due to stress. And in studies by the Queen's School of Business and the Gallup organization, it shows that when employees don't feel engaged in their workplace, when they don't feel committed to their workplace, there's a much higher level of absenteeism, there are more work accidents, there are more accidents and defects. And even more undermining is a loss of loyalty among staff. Workplace stress leads to an increase of almost 50% turnover among staff. And the Center for American Progress estimates that replacing a single employee costs 20% of that employee's salary. That's in the States. I couldn't find a comparable figure for Europe, but that's in the States. And then consumers increasingly, particularly now in the time of the climate crisis, consumers are demanding that companies, at least as great an extent as possible, reflect their own values. 80% of UK consumers expect companies to consider societal interests equal to business interests. 71% of people make it a point to buy brands from companies whose values are similar to their own. So how would a kind workplace look? Well, this isn't a definitive list at all, but to give some idea, that there be an atmosphere of caring for, being interested in and maintaining responsibility for colleagues as friends. You see that use of the word friends for work colleagues. Interesting, huh? Providing support for one another, including offering kindness and compassion when others are struggling. So not this feeling of, if something is difficult is happening in your personal life, you absolutely must not show any emotion in the workplace. A workplace where it's understood that bad things happen and people are trying to cope. Avoiding blame and forgiving mistakes. Inspiring one another in the workplace. And emphasizing the meaningfulness of work. A majority of people look for meaning in their work, even when the actual work itself doesn't appear particularly interesting. There have been studies done with cleaners in care homes who, if they feel that part of their job as they clean is to chat to the residents, their job satisfaction is much higher than those who are forbidden to talk to the clients. And treating one another with respect, gratitude, trust, and integrity. Because the truth is that kindness makes us happier. It's good for the heart, it improves relationships, and it's contagious. Let's look at that a little bit more. When we do something kind for someone else, well, if you do something kind for someone else, how do you feel normally? You feel pretty good, huh? You feel nice. It feels, and part of that is due to elevated levels of dopamine in the brain. Alan Lux, L-U-K-S, Alan Lux, has written a book called The Healing Power of Doing Good. He's done amazing research on volunteers. And it's found that when people start volunteering, live volunteering, not sitting in an office packing envelopes, but volunteering with people, they experience what's called a helper's high, where their levels of well-being and happiness have a real peak. And then if they continue volunteering, that settles into a sort of steady increase in well-being. Kindness being good for the heart. Acts of kindness are accompanied by emotional warmth, and we know that kindness, the production of oxytocin is involved in kindness, and it's a cardioprotective hormone because it helps to reduce blood pressure. And it improves relationships. Think about the people you know. Don't you like the kind people, isn't it easier to like them? Don't you seek out being with people who are kind? You know, if you've got a day coming up and you're going to meet with someone who you know is warm, has a good heart, is kind, don't you look forward to that meeting? And our evolutionary ancestors learned that by cooperating with each other and coming together in groups, they had an increased chance of surviving. And that might have been our ancestors, but it's still true. That this coming together, this connection makes us stronger. And the contagion of kindness, that's a wonderful thing. It's said that if you do a kind act, it has a ripple effect to 3 degrees. So if I do something kind for you, and other people see that act of kindness, then they feel more inclined to be kind. Their level of well-being goes up, and they're more likely to be kind to someone else. An American professor, Jonathan Haidt, has written a book called The Happiness Hypothesis, and he talks about something that he calls elevation. He says in society it's very easy to talk about all the things that are a challenge to society, that are like, look at now with everything that's happening in the world, climate change and polarization and democracy under threat and all the rest of it. But in exactly the same way, when good things happen, people's sense of sort of more ethical hopefulness is increased. They're elevated. There's a sense of elevation. So kindness isn't just a soft skill. It's embedded in the fabric of a healthy society. So that brings us now, if we're moving in from the workplace and how the lack of kindness affects the workplace, and then how kindness actually is. Let's now come to ourselves as individuals and do that reflection again, but in relationship to yourself. So just sit for a moment and think about yourself and how you practice kindness. When are the occasions that you find it just perfectly easy and natural to be kind? And when are the occasions or the situations where it's hard? Where it feels blocked? Something I've been thinking about a lot recently is that we very rarely know what other people are coping with. We all wear our coping masks, particularly in the workplace, where we have so much invested in our success and our livelihoods. But oftentimes, there's all kinds of stuff going on behind those coping masks. And it's so important in the way we connect with each other that we give each other the benefit of the doubt in recognizing that stuff can be going on for people that isn't easy. I have a friend who's just set off today to give a 1-week mindfulness retreat in Holland. And the way it's set up, he gives it by himself. So it's a full-on week from Monday lunchtime till Friday lunchtime. And his brother's just died. He's not going to go and talk about his brother dying. Why would he? People aren't going to know his brother's died. But the actual fact is he has this increased tenderness because of losing this close family member. And, you know, if we had the time and we knew each other well enough, we could all put our hands up. And I'm sure each of us has got something, maybe not as much as losing our sibling, but we'll all have something that's impacting us at the moment. And if we don't carry out our working life with some kind of recognition of each other as human beings, then we're really selling ourselves short. And as I mentioned fleetingly a moment ago, we have the raw materials for kindness. Kindness is hardwired into our makeup. And this comes from the fact that, you know, as the neocortex developed and we gathered together to live in tribes, and we recognize that our offspring are born, you know, months prematurely. You know, a human baby can't talk, feed itself, it can't even sit up, it can't hold its head up. And so because our offspring is so vulnerable, the society needed to protect and care for them had to be a cooperative society. And this is a quote I often use. Although humans inherit a biological basis that permits them to feel anger, jealousy, selfishness, and envy, and to be rude, aggressive, or violent, they inherit an even stronger biological basis for kindness, compassion, love, and nurture. So what blocks our natural kindness? Well, first of all, we're conditioned to be competitive, particularly in the workplace. We want to succeed, we want to get ahead, we want to be successful, and the bottom line is we want to put food on the table. You know, we all need a job. We need to work to live. So we're competitive. And we're afraid of being seen as weak. Or this, does it make sense for Norwegians, this expression soft touch? Anyone doesn't work for you? Yeah, soft touch. Sorry? Soft touch, it's... Yeah? I mean, we've all got this worry that in the workplace, you know, there could be a sort of invisible sign on our back that says, oh, you know, go to her or him, he'll let you off. You know, we don't want to be seen to be a fool. And we worry that we'll be taken advantage of, that once we give someone a certain amount of kindness, my God, they might want more. You know, they might become unstoppable. We do one thing for them, they're going to want 6. You know, you have this expression also in Norway: give someone an inch and they take a mile. Well, even more, give someone a centimetre and they take it. Yeah. And then the stress and anxiety, and this one's a real killer, because everything about stress closes us down. You know, we can be a naturally kind and giving kind of person, but if we're going through extreme stress, all our potential, all our skills are closed down. And I have an example to share with you in a moment of this next one, of being too busy, which often is associated with stress. You know, there isn't time. I'd like to be kind. I am a kind person, but I don't have time just now. You know, I've got this to do. I've got that to do. I can't stop and look after this or that. You know. And of course, I have a sister who works for IBM, and I just can't fathom the workload she has. I mean, her boss deliberately schedules her 3 meetings at the same time because she doesn't want her to waste a second. You know, so my sister's I don't know how she did it, but she's quite high up in the IBM management scale in the UK. And she has to manage sort of 3 meetings in the space of 1. And then intense work deadlines, things that have to be done yesterday. So here's the example. Have you heard of this research that was done in Princeton University? It's a while ago. It was in the 1970s. Anyone heard? Well, let me tell you the story, and maybe it'll become familiar. The study involved a group of students who were studying to become priests, and they were asked to give a short talk. And some of them were asked to give a talk on the parable of the Good Samaritan, but not all of them. But they were in this room, say, and they had to cross over to another room to give the talk. And on the way, there was an actor lying on the ground, groaning, asking for help. He was a plant. Students didn't know that. They thought he was a person who'd got sick or was in trouble. And they were told, sorry, yes, that's the parable of the good, oh, sorry. Ah! I've done something horrendous. Do you know how I get it back? Okay, shut your eyes and you don't get dizzy. I'm going to speed through to where I was. Yeah, parable of the Good Samaritan, that's just to remind you. And the students were in 3 groups, and this is what some were told they had plenty of time to get from here to there to give their talk. Some were told they were on time. If you leave now, that would just be perfect. And some were told they were late. And then there's the actor lying on the ground. Well, I think you can probably guess where this story's going. Sorry. Right, these were the findings. 63% of the participants in the early condition stopped to help. Still only 63. And don't forget, they were studying divinity. 45% of the participants in the on-time condition stopped to help, and 10% in the you're late. It was more important to them to get to their talk and deliver it as they thought as part of their course than it was to help this guy on the ground groaning for help. So what can we do? Because think of yourself in that situation. Can you actually put your hand on your heart and say, oh no, I would have stopped. Definitely I would have stopped. I mean, would you? We hope we would have done, but would we have done? You know, if the clock is ticking and we're told we get this many marks for the talk, and well, it all comes down, and I say this with confidence in this environment where everyone's engaged in mindfulness, it comes down to training our minds. It comes down to learning how to access our kindness even when things are difficult. And we know that contemplative traditions have known for over 2,000 years that training the mind helps to realize our potential. But now we're lucky enough to live in a time when neuroscience and the whole idea of neuroplasticity is allowing science to endorse this understanding. And I'm sure many of you will know one of the global superstars of this work, Richard Davidson, one of my heroes. But here's also a quote from Tanya Singer, which I like very much. What our findings suggest is that instead of being born an egoist and being stuck as an egoist, these mental exercises can change your outlook on the world, and you can change from an egoist to someone more compassionate and in touch with the realities and possibilities of his or her life very quickly. And she's basing that largely on research done on loving-kindness meditation. You know, as mindfulness people, you know about the Harvard research, don't you, from 2010, that was done in Harvard by Killingsworth and Gilbert. They designed a phone app. People were asked during the day what they were doing and what they were thinking about. And the discovery was that for almost half our waking hours, we're thinking about something different to what we're doing. So a key factor in whether or not we're accessing our natural kindness is the extent to which we're paying attention. So the key is, as with so many things, the key is meditation and mindfulness. If we're practicing meditation, if we're practicing mindfulness, there is more chance that we will be present to what we're doing and to what's happening around us, and that we might be able to pick up the signs and be able to reflect on our own behavior more accurately, so that there's more chance that we'll access this natural resource we have. Are you still with me? I'm not talking too fast. For the rest of the talk, what I'm going to try and do now is look at 4 strategies for the workplace. And I'm hoping I can go just a little bit after 1:45, because I think we started at 4 minutes past. So, do we have a deal? Okay, so I want to look at not causing harm, at the golden rule, at loving kindness, meditation, and at empathy. So let's look at this, paying attention to where we might inadvertently cause harm at work. There's all kinds of ways in the workplace that through lack of attention or distraction or just not thinking, we cause harm. We don't even have to be the worst gossip in the workplace. We can just be someone who colludes with the gossip, just someone who doesn't stop the gossip. And then how is criticism dealt? If you're a manager of any kind, how do you deal with employees, with staff members, team members who have not done so well? How do you handle criticism? And its big ugly sister, blame. There are. I know my sister tells me that in IBM, blame is just really alive and well. You know, whatever happens, it's someone else's fault, and her boss will actually instruct her to find the culprit. She had to do an exercise. She had to do a staff review, and the boss wanted her to get rid of 3 staff. And my sister said, well, none of them have been incompetent enough. So her boss said to her, choose the bottom 3 and throw one of them overboard. Totally arbitrary. Just they were going to be the scapegoat because the team needed to lose a person. And bullying, of course. This can be quite subtle. This doesn't have to be out and out kind of aggressive bullying. It can be quite mild, but it's like not including people, the person who's always left out, the person who's marginalized. And then flip it round the other way and just ask yourself how well you listen at work. Because we're busy, and it's very easy to have our own commentary running continuously, and if someone's trying to tell us something, are we actually hearing what they're saying? Are we picking up the deeper signs of what they're saying? Or is our own internal monologue the main thing we're hearing? And then feedback. Are you allowing a situation, are you engaging in a situation where there's an opportunity to talk about how things are going, to exchange? So, there are, if we had time to do an exercise now, I'm sure you could come up with lots more ways in which we might inadvertently cause harm at work. But these are just a few to give you something to think about, something to look at next time you're at work, to notice if there are these or any others that are active in your workplace. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Golden Rule. It's originally attributed to Confucius, but some version or other of it is found in most of the major world religions. And of course, it doesn't have to be affiliated with a religion to be useful. And this is something I find quite helpful just to have. I have a picture of the Golden Rule up on my wall opposite, behind my computer, just to remind me when I'm writing an email, would I like to receive an email like this? Or on a phone call where I do a lot of work by Skype, and as you feel your irritation level rising, just sort of, is this how I would like to be talked to? It's a very simple sort of reminder. And then there's loving kindness meditation. I've attached a link here because, as I understand it, the PowerPoints are going to be given to people as PDFs. So for those of you who are not familiar with loving kindness meditation, and I'm sure many of you are, there's a link here where you can see how to do it well. Originally it was known as one of the 4 Brahma Viharas. It's a very popular practice for research carried out by neuroscientists because it's really working with a shift in kindness and compassion. And it's said to be the antidote to anger. This practice is actually an antidote to anger. And it has different stages. And the key thing is, and I think this is very important, is it starts with ourselves. So you start by wishing loving kindness for yourself. So you feel yourself being filled with loving kindness. So your own natural kindness is topped up, completely full, accessible. And then you think of a series of people. This kindness overflows in your heart, and you share it with people that you love, that you're close to, that you're friendly with, a neutral person, maybe someone like the doorman in your building, or the tram driver, the tram you get to work, or the postman. But then it gets really interesting because the next stage is to try and do this practice with someone who confronts you. And if you choose someone in your workplace who you find challenging, and I'm sure we've all got one or two, then that's a very good person to do this practice with. And then eventually the whole workplace. And here's I thought we'd actually do this now. This is a sort of an exercise in the spirit of loving kindness practice, but it's something we can do every day. So why not just take a moment and imagine yourself at work. And ask yourself, what do you need most now in your workplace? What would help you most? If several things go through your mind, just choose the one that feels the most intimate, the closest one to you. And then imagine yourself receiving that element that you need or wish for. Imagine yourself receiving that. How that feels. And now, if you can, imagine yourself offering that someone else, being able to give someone else that helpful action that you needed for yourself, how would it be to share that? Okay. Was that all right? Did you? So it's something you could see yourself doing at work? No one would need to know what you're doing. You could do it between meetings or on the way to pick something up. Or okay, and that brings us to empathy, which of course is a huge subject. The ability to feel with another person. But at this point, I'm more interested in what blocks our empathy. And these are four of the big ones. Prejudice of all kinds. It's easier to be kind to someone poor and in need than it is to someone rich and successful. That's a prejudice. Authority. It's easier to feel with a work colleague who's on the same level as you than a boss, often. Distance. Maybe if your work team is working on one project, and I mean, I'm often struck with, there's a tea company I work with, and I'm often struck with how they talk about that certain suppliers they have. They work quite hard to maintain a certain level of kindness and cooperation among their own team, but then the suppliers, somehow they don't get quite the same consideration because they're at a distance. They're not in the core team, they're somewhere else. And denial. So here's a little movie to show you how this might work. This is from it taken in. Oh no, sorry, I'll do this first and then the movie by the look of it. Yeah. So what we need to do is humanize the other. So work really hard on seeing the other person as just like you. There was research done at the end of the Second World War with foot soldiers in Korea, because it was found that most of them hadn't fired their guns during the whole Second World War. And the American army realized that this was no way to win a war. You know, if your troops didn't fire their guns, what was going to happen the next time they invaded somewhere? So they set about a concerted program of dehumanizing the enemy, so that gradually, over a number of years and a number of conflicts, the proportion of soldiers firing their weapons increased until we got to Vietnam, where the majority of soldiers fired their guns. But the irony is that look at what happened to the soldiers when they came back home. Most of them were completely off their heads, you know, with huge psychological problems, drug problems, because actually something broke in them by being subjected to this intense dehumanization program. So learning to find something human about the person who's driving you crazy is just a key to drawing the poison. Look for things that you share. Parenting, wanting to be happy, certain interests. Try and feel with their difficulty. I actually do this. I can't say I have 100% success, but I do this with Donald Trump. Because I can get myself in such a state about the way he behaves. And now, of course, I have Boris Johnson right next to him. And I struggle, but I try as hard as I can to try and find something where, there's a moment where Trump might show affection to one of his children, or just looking for any small moment that just reminds me that this isn't a monster, it's a human, it's a human being, just like me. So putting yourself in their shoes. So here's the movie. He's asking for help, Edouard, saying in French.
Came to rescue the weak and the poor, chose to serve and not be served. Jesus, you have called us, freely we receive now, freely we will give. We must go, live to feed the hungry, stand beside the broken. We must go, stepping forward, keep us from just singing, move us into action. We must go. To act justly every day, loving mercy in every way, walking humbly before you, God. You have shown us what you require. Freely we've received now, freely we will give. We must go, live to feed the hungry, stand beside the broken. We must go, stepping forward, keep us from just singing, move us into action. We must go.
Chilling, isn't it? The bit that gets me is with the homeless man, the woman who runs for the metro. And the first time I saw this movie, I thought, oh, she's running to help him. She was straight past. So this is an example of the first blockage to empathy, the prejudice. That someone who appears respectable is more likely to get help than someone who is apparently less respectable. So I'd like to finish with this quote from Gillespie, who was one of the researchers involved in the discovery of mirror neurons. The neurons that help us to mirror what another person is thinking and feeling. He said, it seems we're wired to see other people as similar to us rather than different. At the root, as humans, we identify the person we're facing as someone like ourselves. So, by paying attention and overcoming our sort of fears and blockages, we have this natural resource to tap into. So hopefully in this short talk, I've given you an idea of the cost of stress and depression in the workplace, a few very simple benefits of kindness. There's an awful lot more to say. Some things that can block our kindness, emphasize the importance of mind training, and given a few simple exercises that you could try in your workplace. Thank you very much for your kind attention.